The rhythmic, deep vibration of massive steam engines rattles your teeth, shaking you from a heavy sleep. You open your eyes to the soft glow of polished brass lamps and the undeniable smell of fresh paint, sea salt, and bitter coal smoke. You are lying on a narrow, unfamiliar bunk in a freezing room. You sit up, your heart pounding violently, and notice the crisp, white canvas life jacket resting quietly in the corner. You look through the small, frosted porthole at the endless, pitch-black ocean rolling outside, and a sickening, impossible realization hits you. You have somehow been completely displaced through time, thrust directly into the epicenter of the most infamous maritime disaster in human history. The date is April 14th, 1912, and you are trapped aboard the legendary RMS Titanic. Your modern mind instantly screams with the horrifying, undeniable facts you learned from history books and movies. Tonight, at exactly 11:40, this magnificent, supposedly unsinkable ocean liner will violently strike an iceberg in the freezing North Atlantic. 2 hours and 40 minutes later, it will plunge to the freezing bottom of the ocean, taking over 1,500 terrified souls down with it into the abyss. You have absolutely no ticket, no Edwardian money, and your strange, synthetic modern clothing instantly marks you as a highly suspicious stowaway to the rigid, class-obsessed crew. If you run to the captain's bridge right now and start screaming wildly about an impending iceberg, you will absolutely not save the ship. The officers will simply declare you a dangerous lunatic, throw you deep into the ship's master-at-arms brig, and practically guarantee that you drown inside a locked steel cage. You have to save yourself, and the clock is ticking. You quickly strip off your modern jacket, desperately searching the small, cramped third-class cabin for anything that will help you blend into the era. You find a heavy, rough-spun wool coat and a dark tweed cap hanging on a brass hook, aggressively throwing them over your clothes to hide your 21st century origins. You step out into the long, brightly lit, pristine white corridor, surrounded by the deafening, continuous hum of the ship's massive reciprocating engines. You check the elegant analog clock mounted at the end of the hall. It reads exactly 10:15 in the evening. You have exactly 1 hour and 25 minutes before the catastrophic collision. Your absolute first priority is getting up to the open boat deck, but you quickly discover the terrifying, fatal reality of the Titanic's architectural design. The ship is a vertical, highly secure maze built on strict class segregation. Heavy steel gates block the narrow stairwells leading up to the luxurious first-class promenades, heavily guarded by uniformed crew members explicitly ordered to enforce the social hierarchy. You blend into a noisy crowd of steerage passengers, celebrating happily in the third-class general room, trying to subtly warn them of the impending doom. You casually mention the freezing temperature outside, suggesting they gather their warmest clothes and head up to the open decks, just in case of an emergency. They laugh right in your face, raising their heavy pints of ale, playing lively music, and remaining entirely blinded by the absolute certainty that God himself could not sink this magnificent vessel. Their overwhelming, tragic confidence forces you to make a deeply painful choice. You must abandon them. You know that within a few short hours, almost every single smiling person in this room will be dead. You quietly slip away and sneak up a narrow, hidden crew stairway, emerging onto the freezing, wind-whipped boat deck just as the ship's bells ring out clearly into the night. You peer over the railing into the pitch-black void of the freezing ocean. The water is perfectly, eerily calm, reflecting the brilliant stars like a dark glass mirror, which is exactly why the freezing lookouts in the high crow's nest cannot see the water breaking at the base of the massive iceberg. And then, you hear it. It is not a massive Hollywood-style explosion. It is a terrifying, low-pitched grinding noise that vibrates straight through the thick steel deck plates and travels violently up into your boots. The ship shudders violently, throwing you off balance. The massive engines suddenly go completely, terrifyingly quiet. The lethal countdown has officially begun. The immediate aftermath of the fatal collision is vastly more terrifying than you ever imagined, because it is so incredibly, unsettlingly quiet. There are no blaring sirens, no flashing red alarms, and absolutely no public address system to warn the thousands of sleeping passengers below deck. The officers quietly, methodically, begin uncovering the heavy wooden lifeboats, acting casually as though it is merely a standard precautionary safety drill. You know the horrifying mathematical truth. There are over 2,200 people currently on board, but the lifeboats can only physically hold about half of them. You move quickly toward lifeboat number 7, knowing from historical records that the very first boats leave the ship completely half-empty. But the rigid, unyielding social rules of 1912 are strictly enforced at the end of a loaded revolver. The officers shout the infamous order loudly into the freezing night. Women and children only. The crew forms a tight, aggressive human perimeter, physically pushing back the growing, anxious crowd of confused, frightened men. Your modern survival instinct to simply jump into the boat is instantly paralyzed by the terrifying moral weight of the situation. If you force your way into that wooden seat, knowing exactly what will happen tonight, you are actively condemning someone else to a freezing, agonizing death in the black water. You back away slowly into the dark shadows, deciding instead to rely entirely on your modern understanding of severe hypothermia and physics to survive the final plunge. You sprint dangerously down the slanted, icy wooden deck, frantically searching for heavy, buoyant materials. You find a large stack of wooden deck chairs and a heavy, solid oak door propped open near the luxurious first-class lounge. The tilt of the massive ship is becoming severe now. The bow is sinking rapidly beneath the freezing, relentless waves, and the massive, luxurious stern is rising slowly and impossibly high into the starry sky. Pure, unadulterated panic finally violently shatters the polite, civilized illusion of the night. The desperate screams begin echoing across the open ocean, a terrifying, deafening chorus of thousands of people realizing they have been completely abandoned. Bright distress rockets explode violently overhead, casting a harsh, ghostly white light over the chaotic, bloody scramble for the final remaining lifeboats. You strap a stiff cork life belt tightly to your chest, frantically layering every single piece of heavy wool clothing you manage to steal. You tie yourself firmly to the heavy wooden door using a piece of severed rigging rope, knowing perfectly well that hitting the 28-degree water will send your body into immediate, violent cardiovascular shock. The clock hits exactly 2:18 in the morning. The massive ship groans with an ear-splitting, agonizing metallic roar as the incredible weight of the towering stern literally tears the enormous steel hull completely in half. The bright electric lights violently flicker, casting long, terrifying shadows and then permanently die, plunging the entire world into absolute, terrifying darkness. You grip the wooden door with all your remaining physical strength as the severed stern bobs back like a massive cork before beginning its final, devastating vertical plunge into the abyss. The rushing, freezing water catches you, delivering a brutal, crushing physical impact that instantly and violently forces all the oxygen from your lungs. It feels like thousands of sharp, icy knives driving directly into your exposed skin. You kick frantically, fighting the immense, terrifying downward suction of the sinking Leviathan, finally bursting through the freezing surface, gasping violently for air. You pull your numb upper body onto the wooden door, shivering uncontrollably, completely surrounded by a sprawling, horrific sea of struggling bodies and floating wooden debris. The collective screams of over 1,000 terrified people crying out for help in the pitch-black, freezing night echo continuously in your ears. You miraculously survive the longest, most physically agonizing hours of your entire life, drifting helplessly in the freezing, silent darkness until the RMS Carpathia finally arrives with the morning dawn. You are pulled shivering onto the rescue ship, wrapped tightly in heavy wool blankets, completely surrounded by the haunting, silent grief of the surviving widows and orphaned children. You successfully used your modern knowledge to cheat a frozen death, but the deep psychological scars of watching history's most famous tragedy unfold right in front of your eyes will absolutely never heal. You realize the deeply terrifying truth of time travel. Possessing absolute knowledge of the future does not magically grant you the power to change it. It only makes you a helpless, agonizing witness to the inevitable cruelty of history. If you survived this one, hit subscribe, because next week it gets worse.